Hello friends. Renowned theoretical physicist and cosmologist Stephen Hawking once stated, "The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge." His words remind us of the danger of clinging to false beliefs, which can impede our pursuit of truth and prevent us from recognizing it when it does appear. Many of us find ourselves at the crossroads of ideas about God from both science and religion. However, what if these ideas are either false or incomplete? From the moment we are born, religion has indoctrinated us with information it claims to have received from God. This is a remarkable success for religion, as approximately 70% of individuals persist in accepting this information throughout their lives, and often without a hint of suspicion. However, for those of us who remain skeptical, how can we discern the truth amidst the multitude of beliefs and perspectives? The information I am about to share represents the culmination of many years spent searching for the truth about God, and how I uncovered this information. My Christian upbringing had left me with a very confusing depiction of God, but then, much later, this happened. At different points over the years, a clear picture of God, the universe, and who we are, began to unfold. Surprisingly, the information did not come from books or external sources. I would suddenly become aware that new thoughts and information had entered my mind, but in a way that felt like they were always there. Nevertheless, on each occasion, I would record these thoughts as quickly as I could, fearing that they might vanish just as easily as they had appeared. Initially, I hesitated to discuss these thoughts openly, as I was certainly not looking forward to the outcry from the armies of cult-like religious followers, who can no longer see beyond their programmed realities. These are the contemporary religious gladiators, apologists, and foot soldiers, who are forever on high alert as guardians of their faith. However, with the encouragement of a close friend, I eventually wrote a book detailing the journey to find God, and the inspirations that led to his uncovering. This video is the first in a series, designed to share some of the discoveries highlighted in the book. First, we shall examine the 10 greatest falsehoods told about Jesus and God, beginning with the lie that Jesus is God. In the next video, I will share the knowledge about what God is, and who we are. This first video will examine the claim by Christians, that Jesus is God. This assertion is easily refuted, so it is quite remarkable that millions persist with this false belief. We intend to refute this claim from 3 different perspectives. First, we will show that God in the person of Jesus did not die to save a sinful humanity. Next, we will show that the ability of Jesus to perform miracles, as well as his resurrection, is insufficient evidence that he is God. Finally, we will show that there are fundamental differences between Jesus and the God of the Bible. So, did Jesus die to save humanity? Many Christians embrace the doctrine of the Trinity, which asserts that God comprises 3 distinct entities: the Father, the Spirit, and Jesus. Moreover, they hold the belief that sinful humanity was on a path leading to hell and destruction, necessitating a divine plan wherein Jesus would serve as a penal substitute, dying in place of humans. Now, consider a scenario in which a human judge knowingly orchestrates the execution of an innocent man for crimes he did not commit. Most of us would find this thought deeply troubling and morally reprehensible due to the inherent injustice. But, isn't this precisely what Christians say happened to Jesus? If Christians indeed maintain that the Father and the Holy Spirit were involved in a plan that led to the torture and death of an innocent Jesus, it would clearly contradict their assertion of God's righteousness and moral character. William Lane Craig, a respected research professor at Talbot School of Theology, has argued that God does not, or cannot pardon sin unless the demands of divine justice are met. However, this perspective triggers a series of questions. Can an omnipotent God truly be constrained in his ability to pardon? Furthermore, why does our understanding of divine justice often intertwined with ideas of cruelty, torture, killing, and death? Additionally, why would a merciful God not consider alternative approaches, such as pardon, forgiveness, and reincarnation, as more fitting forms of restorative justice? Surely, This claim of penal substitution with Jesus as the sacrifice is rendered unnecessary and false, given God's omnipotence, and his limitless capacity to grant pardon. Suggesting otherwise implies that God chose to exercise cruelty and death over forgiveness. But there's more. Many Christians believe that God, in the person of Jesus, entered the world as a human child, born of a virgin mother. However, it is important to note that during the time of Jesus, women accused of adultery would typically face execution by stoning. Therefore, any plan by God to involve a woman in a virgin birth would immediately put both the mother and the unborn child at risk of death. To avoid this tragic fate, the mother of Jesus would need to create a false identity for the child's father, or face the dire consequences of stoning. Moreover, Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus, would also be drawn into this web of deception to safeguard the lives of both the mother and child. So, if this claim of a virgin birth was true, it would immediately implicate God in a scheme filled with deception and lies. This would also be highly inconsistent with the noble start Jesus would have wanted, given that he spent much of his life teaching that lying is a sinful act. Furthermore, if an omnipotent God truly desired to become human, it would be quite unnecessary for him to require a woman's assistance in this endeavor. In summary, we have refuted the first claim that Jesus died for humanity using information from the Bible in 3 ways. First, we showed that penal substitution is an immoral and unjust act, which contradicts the idea of God's morality and righteousness. Next, we demonstrated that it is unnecessary, unless God prioritizes cruelty over forgiveness. Finally, we showed that any involvement in a virgin birth would implicate God in a conspiracy of deception and lies. Therefore, the claim that God entered the world as a human to die for humanity is easily exposed as false. Now let's delve into the second reason why the assertion that Jesus is God is false. Christians often put forward the notion that Jesus' ability to perform miracles and his resurrection are evidence he is God. But, is this a reasonable claim? Well, let's turn to the evidence found in the Bible. In the book of Acts, we find an account of Peter healing a man who had been lame from birth and was begging for alms at the temple gate called Beautiful. Acts chapter 3 verses 1 to 10. Peter also healed a man named Aeneas, who had been bedridden for 8 years. Acts chapter 9 verses 32 to 35. Furthermore, Peter raised a woman named Tabitha from the dead. Acts chapter 9 verses 36 to 42. In Acts chapter 14 verses 8 to 10, we read about Paul healing a man who had been lame from birth and had never walked before. And finally, in Acts chapter 20 verses 9 to 12, Paul performed another miraculous act by raising a young man named Eutychus from the dead, after he had fallen out of a window and died. This evidence demonstrates that humans, other than Jesus, were capable of both performing miracles and being resurrected. As a result, the mere fact of being resurrected or having the power to resurrect is insufficient evidence to claim that Jesus is God. Even Jesus himself did not assert that he possessed unique powers, as stated in John chapter 14 verse 12, where he indicated that others would do even greater things than he had done. Therefore, the evidence from the Bible does not support the claim that Jesus is God. In this third section, we will directly compare Jesus and the God of the Bible to highlight their significant differences. So, what do Christians believe about God? And what does the Bible say about God? Christians believe in a loving, kind, forgiving, and righteous God. They often describe God as omnipotent, signifying his all-powerful nature, and use the term omnibenevolent to convey his warmth, gentleness, and kindness. Now, if all of this is true, one might naturally expect most of us to embrace such a God, as his vast powers could guide, nurture, and protect us, right? Well, as we shall see, the Bible portrays a substantially different image of God. We know that not all Christians interpret Bible passages literally. Nevertheless, this blurring between reality and symbolism is a significant source of confusion regarding who or what God is. Here are some claims about God from the Christian Bible. In Genesis 6-9, The Bible tells of God flooding the entire earth to wipe out humanity due to their wickedness, sparing only Noah and his family. This story depicts God as an entity who does not hesitate to kill men, women, and children, as part of collective punishment for the crimes of a few. Whether taken literally or symbolically, this sharply contradicts the idea of a merciful, loving, or benevolent God. In Genesis chapter 19, the Bible states that God destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because he disagreed with the behavior of some adults. Only one family was spared, which raises similar concerns about God's justice or morality. But there's more. Exodus chapter 20 portrays God as a jealous entity who seeks revenge on those who worship other gods, even extending this punishment to their children and descendants. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6 reveals God's favoritism towards some tribes over others, discouraging interrelationships among them. If these stories are taken literally, they present a God who is jealous and insecure, and who encourages tribalism and division, rather than unity among humans. In Genesis chapter 22, God is said to have tested Abraham's faith by commanding him to sacrifice his son Isaac as a burnt offering. But God already knew that Abraham would pass the test, so what was the purpose of inflicting this emotional pain? Finally, in Matthew chapter 25 verse 41, God is described as planning to separate and torture more than half of humanity on a day of judgment. However, humans do not pose a threat to God, so what is the purpose of this cruelty? It is abundantly clear that the biblical God, whether interpreted literally or symbolically, is portrayed as an entity associated with fear, terror, torture, and death. This God is often depicted as self-centered, jealous, egotistical, easily angered, vengeful, showing favoritism, endorsing blood sacrifices, and not sparing even innocent children. This biblical portrayal of God clearly does not align with the belief of Christians, that God is loving, kind, or merciful. So, what is a reasonable basis for this belief? So, now that we have examined the biblical God, what does the same Bible say about Jesus? During his life, Jesus emerged as a populist leader, welcoming the marginalized, downtrodden, women, foreigners, peasants, religious outcasts, and societal outcasts. His messages primarily revolved around love, with statements like, "Love your neighbor as yourself," "Do good to those who try to hurt you," and "Love one another." Jesus demonstrated his teachings by risking his life to help others, forgiving those who sought to harm him, feeding the hungry, healing the sick, and comforting the needy. Jesus made it clear that God was greater than himself and never demanded worship. He remained humble, without pride, ego, or jealousy, and never threatened to harm anyone. Around 325 years after his death, a group of influential individuals led by Emperor Constantine declared Jesus a god. Regrettably, even after 2,000 years, humanity is still grappling with the negative consequences of that very bad decision. The human Jesus inspires love, kindness, and charity, a stark contrast to the terrifying and cruel God depicted in the Bible. Therefore, based on their personalities, it is unreasonable to assert that these two entities are the same. In conclusion, we've refuted the assertion that Jesus is God using evidence from the Christian Bible, examining it from three key perspectives. First, we examined the concept of incarnation and demonstrated that penal substitution does not satisfy the demands of divine justice. In simpler terms, a divine plan to kill Jesus would be unjust, and would imply that God prioritized torture and death over forgiveness. We also refuted the claim that God was involved in a virgin birth, as this scheme involves deception and lies. Next, we argued that Jesus' ability to perform miracles and be resurrected does not uniquely identify him as God, as others have demonstrated similar capabilities. Lastly, we highlighted the stark contrast between the human Jesus and the God depicted in the Bible in terms of their personalities and characters. The discussions overwhelmingly demonstrate that the claim is not rooted in morality or justice, and lacks evidential support. Regrettably, It also tarnishes Jesus's reputation. Therefore, the assertion that Jesus is the God described in the Christian Bible is unequivocally false. Please like and subscribe to our channel for notifications on our upcoming videos. In the next video, I'll share inspirations I received about the true nature of God, and why the God depicted in the Bible is a product of human imagination. Much of the content in this video series is taken from my latest book, titled, Welcome to the New God: Truths About God and Who We Are. You can find a link to the book in the description below.